everybody, it's May 3rd, 2021, and it is the start of a new month. And for those of you guys who are not aware, May is actually May Mental Health Awareness Month. So before I get started with this video, I just want to do a big ol' shout out to all of my colleagues who are at this very moment doing what you do best by working with your clients and pouring into them so much of you into their lives and making a big difference. And for all the other individuals out there, clients of ours, people just out there advocating and speaking on what mental health awareness is all about, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing light to something that has been for so long and still is today. Such a taboo topic, such a sensitive issue. But you know what? Mental health is a part of all of us. It's a part of who we are. Just as important, as physical health and spiritual health. So I really want to thank everyone, for really working so hard. And what better way for me to be able to further this this month of awareness than to post this video, really. So it's been a couple weeks since the last time I posted, and the previous video I ended with this exercise and challenging everyone to consider some important concepts. And in the exercise, I walked you guys through, in our imaginations, a forest, coming upon a flower, and how this flower is very different in that it did not blend into the background of green forestry, but was in and of itself its own color, vibrant. But the challenge there was to consider the narrative that we played out with this particular flower that we imagined. And there were two different narratives. There was one when we described the flower as something that was very beautiful, that belonged there in its environment, that had something to add to the environment. And the other narrative was one that was quite the opposite. That was the narrative of this flower being a species of plant that didn't belong, and that it was something that we needed to get rid of and eradicate. So you can imagine that if you and I are walking along this path, and I am presenting to you one of the two narratives, and let's imagine then that you go home and you present the same narrative, whichever one, good or bad, negative or positive, to your family. And let's pretend that they then become really interested in what you found, what you discovered in this forest. They heard your story about that flower, and then they start spreading the news to everyone else in the community that you lived. So you can imagine, it went from you and I having a conversation to you going home to tell your family, to your family then telling whoever they know, and it just goes down the line, right? You guys remember being kids and playing that game? I think it's called telephone, right? You start with one person who has a message and you're supposed to whisper down the lane, right? I think that was the name of the game, whisper down the lane. And you are trying to whisper the message that the previous person whispered to you, but at the end of the game, the last person to hear the message, we have to figure out whether or not they have the full message and they were able to say it correctly or heard it correctly. And it was up to the originator of that message to be able to judge whether or not that message was said correctly as it was whispered down the lane. So let's apply this idea to people, right? So people, right? We have different narratives that we play out about people. And we judge people according to a multitude of things. We judge people based off of what we initially see, what we initially hear about them, what we initially learn about them. Our judgments are sometimes influenced by previous experiences and messages that we've received through things that we've been through or things that we've heard from other people. So you can imagine, right, we went from this lovely little imaginative exercise of this flower being different, and the narrative that we played and we applied it to people. What an interesting concept, right? Whatever narrative that it is that we replay over and over and over again in our minds, it could really make or break a difference when we go to spread that news out into our communities and into the world abroad. So I kind of alluded to this idea of a message that was then relayed to someone else and into a larger group. So we then start to adopt a sort of group think, a group mentality, right? And if we don't challenge ourselves to think outside of those messages and outside of that group thinking, we might then fall in line with just that particular group think. Groupthink is a social psychology concept that has been talked about and applied broadly throughout all different facets of life. You know, we use groupthink in work situations, in work environments. We use groupthink in schools. We use groupthink in the churches we come from. We use groupthink in our families. So groupthink is definitely something that could occur. And groupthink, I also believe, and I see this all the time, is something that is often reinforced when we go back to the groups that we have come from, where we have felt the most secure and safe in, where we've grown up in, the communities that we were raised in. I have done this, right? I feel safe and secure with the people who I have things that I am acquainted with, that I have similarities with. And when I go back to that group, we talk, we share ideas, we share common things that we live and do every day. But I would challenge us to really consider, when I go back to my group, am I bringing into the group any new information? And what do I do with the previously learned information, right? Do I have a certain kind of narrative that lends itself to a certain type of judgment, especially with regard to people? If I go back to my group and I have a certain type of bias, prejudice, stereotyping that I do and I talk about and I share that with the group, and then we live those experiences together, and then, you know, we start to say, yeah, you know, I agree with this, I agree with that. And if there's no one in that group who says, well, wait a minute, could we reconsider a few of these points, a few of these things that we've learned? Maybe we might need to do that from time to time. I know that through my own personal journey, through my own personal experiences, being in a group, outside of a group, and we've all been there, you know, where we really do naturally develop our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own judgments, perceptions of things that are out there and people who are out there. So when I go back to my group, I really need to think twice about what it is that I share with the group and what sort of narratives that I'm reinforcing in that group. It's really an important thing to do. And I would challenge us all to really be doing that every day. You know, how it is that I share information, what information I share, you know, in what context, in what ways that I communicate that information can really make or break the difference. So referencing back again to the family who I had mentioned a few videos ago, and still the families who I'm working with today, as we're talking about race and culture and religion and gender and sexuality, you know, I have to really wonder and ask, you know, what is it that I'm doing in my own family when I'm talking about things that we do, that we value of importance, but it's different from everyone else out there? How do I have that conversation, and what am I really saying about these other people when they don't think very similarly as I do? So how we talk about these things and what we do with it can create either a harmonious community, or it could create division. Here's another thing to think about. You know, we often do this kind of me versus them, or we and them. We have a us and them kind of mentality. And nothing wrong with feeling connected to your group, your team, so to speak. But if I take that idea of this is my team and that's their team, and if that's the way that I think about everyone and everything, and I start to also supply the narrative of division in that we versus them mentality, well, now we are reinforcing further divide and further differences, right? Again, nothing wrong with having things that are different, nothing wrong with having things that are the same within and outside of the group, but it comes down to what I repeat as the narrative and how I judge all the things and all the people that are out there. So I'm just going to lay that one there for everyone to think on again, and to think deeper and to dig deeper. And each and every one of these videos, again, is just a part of my own journey that I'm sharing with you. These are the same questions and concepts and ideas that I am wrestling with. So I can only imagine what you might be wrestling with on a day-to-day with these same things. And I would just encourage everyone to do the work, dig deeper, figure it out.